There's a moment, and if you felt it, you already know exactly what I'm talking about. Her messages get shorter. The warmth in her voice disappears. The girl who used to lean in suddenly leans back. And the worst part, she doesn't explain anything. She just fades. And now you're stuck in that silent chaos, overthinking every word, every delay, every scene without a reply. Before we go any deeper, if you've ever been in this situation or you're in it right now, subscribe and like this video, because what I'm about to tell you most people never figure out. Listen carefully. When a woman distances herself and starts ignoring you, your instinct as a man will betray you. You'll want to fix it. You'll want to reach out more, send another message. Try to be funnier, kinder, more understanding. You think if you just show her you care a little more, she'll come back. No, that's exactly what pushes her further away. And I'm not saying this to blame you. I'm saying this because nobody ever teaches men this truth clearly. When a woman pulls back, she is not testing how much you can chase her. She is watching how you handle losing control. That silence, it's not empty. It's loaded. It's her observing you without saying a word. Most men fail right here. They panic. They double text. They ask, "Did I do something wrong?" They try to force clarity out of confusion. And in doing that, they slowly erase the very thing that attracted her in the first place. Because attraction doesn't grow in pressure, it dies in it. Right now, she's not just deciding how she feels about you. She's deciding what kind of man you are under pressure. Are you grounded or are you reactive? Are you secure or are you desperate for reassurance? And here's the uncomfortable truth you need to accept. When she starts ignoring you, the situation is no longer about her behavior. It's about your response. This is where everything shifts. You don't win her back by doing more. You don't fix distance by closing it aggressively. And you definitely don't regain attraction by asking for it. There's only one thing that works here, one move that almost nobody has the discipline to make. And when done right, it flips the entire dynamic without you saying a single extra word. But to understand that move, you first need to understand what's really going on inside her mind when she pulls away. Because what she's feeling is not what you think it is. When a woman starts to distance herself, most men assume she's losing interest. But that's too simple. And honestly, it's often not true in the way you think. What's actually happening is a shift inside her emotional system. Something in her perception of safety, attraction, or emotional balance has changed, and she doesn't always explain it because she's not fully conscious of it herself in the moment. Here's what most people miss. Women don't disconnect instantly. They disconnect gradually. Emotionally first, physically second, verbally last. So, when you notice the silence, she's usually already halfway gone emotionally before you even realize something is wrong. And in that stage, your behavior becomes extremely important because she is now observing one thing: your emotional stability under uncertainty. If you become anxious, if you start chasing, if you demand clarity, what she feels is pressure. And pressure doesn't create attraction. It creates resistance. Even if she still likes you, pressure makes her step back further just to breathe again. But here's the part nobody likes hearing. Sometimes she pulls away not because you did something wrong, but because her emotions have shifted internally. Confusion, stress, external attention, or even her own unresolved patterns can cause her to detach temporarily. And in that moment, your reaction determines whether she comes back or disappears completely. Because when you react with panic, you don't look like a safe space anymore. You look like emotional weight. And no woman, no matter how much she liked you before, feels pulled toward emotional weight. She feels pulled toward calm. That's why the strongest men in these situations don't chase clarity. They don't over-explain themselves. They don't collapse into emotional urgency. They pause, not out of manipulation, but out of control. And I need you to understand something very clearly. Silence is not your enemy here. It's the testing ground. She is watching what you do when you are not being reassured. She is noticing if your confidence depends on her attention or if it exists independently of it. This is where attraction either survives or dies. Because if your entire emotional state is controlled by her replies, she will feel that instantly, even without reading a single message from you. And instead of coming closer, she will instinctively create more space. But there is a counterintuitive truth here that changes everything. And it's the exact opposite of what most people do when they feel ignored. The counterintuitive truth is this. When she distances herself, the most powerful move you can make is to stop feeding the distance with your attention. Not out of games, not out of punishment, but because every extra message you send is not closing the gap. It's confirming it. Let me be very direct with you. When you keep reaching out while she's pulling back, you are silently communicating one thing. I am more invested in you than you are in me. And that imbalance kills attraction faster than anything else. Now listen carefully because this is where most people misunderstand everything. Stopping your chase is not the same as playing hard to get. This is not about strategy. It's about emotional self-respect. If she is ignoring you, your first response is not to fix her behavior. Your first response is to stabilize your own energy. Because the real loss in these situations isn't her attention. It's your internal control. Right now, your mind is probably trying to solve her silence like a puzzle. Did I say something wrong? Is she busy? Should I send one more message just to be safe? That mental loop is what destroys your presence. Because while you are analyzing her silence, you are abandoning your own center. And she feels that shift even from a distance. Here's something most men never realize. Attraction is not built on constant communication. It's built on emotional certainty. When someone feels like you are steady regardless of their behavior, that creates intrigue. That creates respect. That creates space for them to come back voluntarily. But when you chase uncertainty, you become part of the uncertainty, and nobody is attracted to confusion that follows them around. So, what do you actually do in this moment? You stop feeding the reaction. You stop replying instantly out of anxiety. You stop trying to repair something that is not in your control. And instead, you redirect your energy back into your life without announcing it. No emotional speeches. No, I guess you don't care anymore. No final paragraphs meant to trigger a response because those messages don't create clarity. They create emotional fatigue. And here's the truth that will sting a little. If she is already distancing herself, your words are no longer influencing her as much as you think. Your behavioral absence is what she notices now. That's the shift. Not begging for attention, not demanding closure, but withdrawing your emotional availability in a calm, controlled way. Because now the dynamic begins to change. Not through pressure, but through contrast. She goes from feeling your emotional pursuit to feeling your absence. And absence does something powerful when there was once presence. It forces reflection, but only if you don't contaminate it with desperation. Because the moment you panic again and reach out, you reset the entire process back to zero. And this is exactly where most men lose everything they didn't even realize they were still building. Now, here's where things get uncomfortable for most people. Because the moment you stop chasing, your brain starts chasing internally. You may not be texting her anymore, but inside, you're still negotiating with yourself. Maybe I should check her profile. Maybe she posted something. Maybe she's texting me. That internal obsession is still emotional dependence, just in a quieter form. And she can feel that too, even without contact. Because what you need to understand is this. People don't only respond to what you do, they respond to the energy pattern you're in. If your silence is calm, grounded, and indifferent, it communicates one thing, stability. But if your silence is anxious, restless, and performative, it still communicates neediness, just without words. So the real shift is not just stopping contact. The real shift is stopping emotional leakage. You need to become someone whose attention is no longer automatically available just because she reappeared or disappeared. Because right now in her mind, there is still a psychological image of you reacting, waiting, watching, subtly hoping. And that image is what keeps her emotionally comfortable staying distant. Why? Because she knows she still has access to you if she wants it. Even without speaking to you, she feels that emotional door is not fully closed. And here's the truth most people don't want to hear. Attraction requires uncertainty, but not your uncertainty, hers. Right now, she is certain of you. She knows your pattern. She knows your emotional availability. She knows what you do when she pulls away. And certainty kills curiosity. So your job is not to convince her of anything. It's to break predictability, not through manipulation, but through emotional recalibration. You stop being the person who reacts immediately to emotional shifts. You become someone whose attention is not emotionally reactive, but intentionally given. And that creates a subtle but powerful shift in how she experiences you. Because now she can no longer assume access. She can no longer assume emotional control. And this is where silence becomes powerful, not as a tactic, but as a consequence of self-control. But here's the critical mistake people make at this stage. They think this means wait for her to come back. No, because waiting is still attachment. And attachment is exactly what she was pulling away from in the first place. What you do instead in this phase determines whether she feels curiosity or final detachment. And there is one specific behavior that separates the two outcomes completely. This is the moment where most people get it wrong again because they turn silence into waiting. And waiting is dangerous because waiting still has emotional expectation attached to it. It still says, I hope she comes back so I can feel okay again. And that energy is still neediness in disguise. What actually changes everything is this. You stop organizing your life around her emotional availability. You don't pause your mood. You don't pause your growth. You don't pause your self-respect just because someone went quiet. You continue calmly, quietly, without announcement. Not to prove anything to her, but to disconnect your identity from her attention. Because right now, she is used to a version of you that adjusts emotionally based on her behavior. That version of you reacts. That version of you checks. That version of you feels unstable when she disappears. And even if she doesn't consciously think it, she feels the pattern. So when that pattern suddenly stops, something very important happens in her mind. Confusion, not emotional confusion, behavioral confusion. You used to react. Why aren't you reacting now? And that confusion creates space for reflection because now she has to reevaluate the image she formed of you. But here's the key. This only works if your absence is clean. No passive-aggressive posts, no indirect messages, no emotional breadcrumbs on social media. No, I don't care anymore performance, because those are still reactions. Clean absence is different. It's neutral. It's quiet. It's not trying to trigger her. It's not trying to provoke her. It's simply you stepping out of emotional overinvestment. And when that happens, something shifts in the dynamic. You go from being emotionally predictable to emotionally unavailable in a grounded way. And that creates a type of tension that is very different from conflict. It creates curiosity because now she doesn't fully know where she stands with you anymore. And when a woman who once felt she understood your emotional reactions can no longer predict them, she starts to reassess her assumptions. But let me be very clear here. This is not a trick to get her back. This is a reset of your emotional positioning. Whether she returns or not becomes secondary to the fact that you are no longer abandoning yourself in confusion. And this is where most people either regain respect or completely lose the situation. Because the final stage is not about her coming back. It's about what you do the moment she notices your silence. So now we arrive at the moment that actually matters. The moment she notices your silence. Not your words, not your explanations, not your emotional reactions, your absence. And this is where everything reveals itself. Because when a woman who was once emotionally engaged with you suddenly experiences your calm distance, she will do one of three things. She will either feel relief, indifference, or curiosity. And the outcome depends entirely on what energy you left behind. If you left behind pressure, arguments, or emotional chasing, she feels relief when you disappear. If you left behind emotional inconsistency, she feels indifference. But if you left behind genuine connection without pressure and then calmly stepped back, she feels curiosity. And curiosity is the only doorway back into reconnection. But here's where people sabotage everything. The moment they sense possible curiosity, they rush back in. They text. They try to reopen the door. They over-explain the silence. And in doing that, they collapse the very space that created attraction again. Because attraction doesn't return through pursuit. It returns through contrast. She needs to feel the difference between who you were when you were emotionally available without balance and who you are when you are emotionally grounded without chasing. And the strongest move you can make in this entire situation is often the one that feels the simplest, but is the hardest to execute. You stay consistent in your life. You don't rush to re-enter her emotional space. You don't try to correct the past. You don't try to fix her silence. You let her experience the absence fully without interruption. Because in that space, she is no longer reacting to your presence. She is reflecting on your absence. And reflection is where emotional reevaluation happens. Not during contact, during distance. But here is the truth. Most people never hear clearly enough. Sometimes she will come back, sometimes she won't. And your power is not in controlling that outcome. Your power is in becoming the kind of person who does not lose themselves either way. Because the real transformation is not about winning her back. It's about no longer abandoning your emotional center for someone who is uncertain about theirs. When you reach that state, you stop reacting to distance with panic. You respond to it with clarity. And ironically, that is the exact state that makes you far more attractive than anything you tried to do before. Because now you are no longer the man chasing connection. You are the man who can hold it or walk away from it without losing himself.